Hello again, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Francesa Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. We're on the Mike Francesa channel on the Bet Rivers Network on YouTube after the 1 o'clock games. I waited. Now, when the teams win, I don't wait for the coach. When they lose, I waited for the coach, and I specifically waited for Dable because it was a tough loss. And I wanted to get into the strategy about whether or not they were going to elevate another kicker just for protection. They knew he had a little bit of a groin, but they didn't know he was going to cover a kick and tear his hamstring. So obviously the Giants were hampered by the loss of the kicker with Gano being out early, the failed PATs, and then, of course, what they did on the fourth down decision, where Neighbors, who had a great game, finally dropped the ball. I'm going to do the Giants first, not because they lost, and it was a tough loss and a bad loss because of what the schedule presents. Giants need to get this game today because that's a very winnable game against a rebuilding team that got singed last week by Tampa. They gave 37 points to the Bucs last week. Baker Mayfield tore them apart, threw 4 touchdown passes. So the fact that the Giants had a good offensive game should not surprise anybody. Neighbors had a really good game. He got targeted 18 times. He caught 10 balls. He had the terrible drop late, which maybe will give him a bit of humility, which he clearly needs. Listen, Neighbors is incredibly talented. But that doesn't mean he has to go off, or the Giants have to let him become a fool and become a clown and become a guy who's going to do all kinds of crazy stuff. I hope he just doesn't become that. He hasn't become that yet, but I just see things that make me think he's going to go in that me direction. I just hope he doesn't, because he's got a world of talent, and he can be any kind of player. And you knew he was going to be good, just like you knew Harrison was going to be good. I mean, Harrison had a bad game last week. Now, as I come down to do this, Harrison's already got 2 touchdowns today and 90 yards in the first quarter and 2 TD receptions. You know how good he's going to be. You know how good Neighbors is going to be. You know how fast Worthy is. He's going to make plays too, but Neighbors is going to catch a lot of balls, as he caught today. 10 for 127 and a touchdown. Giants ran it well with Singletary. Jones played well. The back played well. Neighbors played well. He had a bad drop late, unfortunate. They clearly missed having a kicker. But their defense gave up a ton of yardage. They gave up 215 yards rushing. They gave up a ton of yardage to the back rushing. He averaged 8 yards a carry. They stopped them, but a lot of times Washington stopped itself too with the penalties. But they did stop them every time, and they got beat on 7 field goals. The problem is none of the stats. The problem is they got beat, and now they're 0-2. And their next 4 games are at Cleveland. And Cleveland's going to be healthier for that game. And they won today. They held off Jacksonville and won a tough game in Jacksonville today. So they're 1-1, and their defense was brutal at home. Then they played Dallas on Thursday. Dallas took a whipping today by surprising New Orleans. Then they play at Seattle, which is already 2-0, winning today in overtime against the Pats. And very hard to beat in Seattle. And then they come home and play Cincinnati, which is right now playing the Chiefs on a Sunday night. Those are 4 brutal games right in a row, and they're already 0-2. 0-2 hurts. 0-4, 0-5 is deadly. And right now the schedule is brutal. So that's why this game was more important than most week 2s. Did the Giants do some better things today? Yes. I'll tell you something. When I see Dable now, I don't see the coach who had a little glint in his eye and a little bit of a swagger in his first year. I see a guy who looks like he wants to jump off a bridge. And I see a guy who just wants to give you short answers and wants to, and you can tell that he's up to here with all of it. And he knows he's looking down the barrels at a long season. That's what you take. Not like they're not going to win a couple of games, they are, but you know what? This could be a rough season, and these next 4 weeks could really make this a very, very tough season because, as I have illustrated to you many times and explained to you many times, I really believe that more than any sport, a bad start kills you in this league because of the self-interests of the players, because of the players protecting themselves for their career, and because the guy's not buying into systems. When you get off to a fast start, people buy in. You watch Minnesota buy in behind Sam Darnold at 2-0. You watch some of the other teams that are already off to fast starts, like Seattle, watch them buy in, or the Bucks, who to me are surprising 2-0 and buying in. And of course, Harbaugh's already 2-0 now. He got games he could win the first 2 weeks, absolutely, but he won them. And that's something the Chargers haven't done in the past. They've won decisively, and they run the ball. He rebuilt that offensive line. He's got now he's got Dobbins doing great things already. You know, I'm a big Dobbins guy, always have been. The Giants are now faced with a really tough uphill climb for a team that did not have a big margin to start the year. So it's a very, very tough call. I know a lot wasn't expected. I know most people were in the ballpark of they're going to win somewhere between 6 and 9 games. And no one was expecting the playoffs for the most part. But 0-2 is as bad as it could have been, because the first 2 games against Minnesota and Washington, these were games that are far more winnable than the ones they're going to face in the next month. Now, I want to get to the juicy part, which is the Jets. I would have come down here rip-roaring if the Jets lost this game. They desperately needed to win this game. Buffalo's already 2-0. Buffalo's their competition. Miami obviously has got its issues now at quarterback. New England's 1-1, and that's who they face next on a Thursday. We knew the Jets overall did not play a tough schedule this year. We also know that they were going to face a tough opener. Now, Tennessee has a quarterback who keeps giving, and he gave today, and that was a big part of this game, because otherwise I think Tennessee would have actually broken the game open a little bit if he hadn't made those 2 critical mistakes back to back. But Tennessee's defense, run by Wilson, is a lot tougher than everyone expected. It's a physical, tough defense. It's not aided by some of the stuff the offense does, but it's really a tough defense. And they gave the Jets a hard time. Like, it was a hard-fought game today. The Jets got the win, which they're 1-1. If they can beat New England, then get their 11 days off before they get ready to play a couple of winnable games against Denver. And now the Minnesota game looks tougher before they see Buffalo. They can get off to a decent start. Put the San Francisco game behind them. But there's a lot of things here that you aren't happy with right now with the Jets. Number one, their running game has got to get more proficient than just breaking a couple of big plays or having their guys make some big pass plays. Other than a 30-yard run for Hall, he had a terrible day running the ball. A rough day running the ball. Rodgers only got sacked twice, but they put him under a lot of duress. And they had to go to the real quick offense, which they did. If they had a normal quarterback today, they lose. Instead, he made enough plays, even though if he had to play a lot of games like this, I'd really worry about his safety, because he was off balance a lot of times today, and I worry when he's off balance at his age, especially if he's going to take some hits. Now, they made some plays they had to make. Okay, they made a couple of critical plays they had to make. They got a couple of big plays to the back for touchdowns, but I thought the biggest play was the 2nd and 16 play, which was a perfect pass. And vintage Rodgers. That was a critical play. Absolutely critical. But this defense isn't anywhere near where you want it to be. Not in the secondary, not in the run defense, and now you're stacking up the injuries. All right, Reed being out, fine. But Mosley's got a toe. I doubt he plays Thursday. That can nag for a while. They need his leadership. If they have lost Johnson, we don't know the extent of the injury yet. It sounds like it might be an Achilles. So you're down Huff, you're down Johnson, you don't have Reddick. This Reddick thing, hey, if you want to have designs on what you were hoping for the season, bite the bullet and get Reddick in here, especially now if Johnson's down. Look at the people that they rotated last year. And now, being down the guys they are, if they're down Johnson, Huff, and they don't have Reddick, it's a tough chore. They're no longer the same team. They're clearly not the same team against the run. Defense made some plays. Clemens made a big mistake. Hey, don't just try to swipe at the ball when a sack is what you need. Get the sack. If you get the ball, great, but get the sack. Don't miss the tackle because of the fact you're trying to swipe the ball. Not in that spot. They're lucky they got away from that. Plus, I'd have to ask Gardner what he was doing on the Ridley touchdown. But if the idea is he didn't play as aggressively as he normally would because he thought that it was going to be intercepted, shame on him. You cannot play that way. If you can get in there and knock the ball down, I don't care if you knock the interception down. Interception's a bonus, but the first thing is knock the ball down. Don't back off and let the ball go through. If he did do that, now it looked like he did, but I can't say for sure that he did that on the Ridley touchdown that tied it at 17, because that should have never happened. And remember, you were playing a young quarterback today who made a lot of mistakes. If he didn't make mistakes, this game would have been far tougher. Their defense against the run is not what you want it to be. You wanted the Jets to have a much, much more dominant feel to this team than they have right now. Right now, there is reason, even though they got the win, even though the schedule the next couple of weeks is conducive to them winning games. And they'll have put these 3 and 11 days behind them. Once they get past Thursday, and New England, which, like I said, is never easy if you have the right guy at quarterback. So there's some things to really worry about there on defense. And, their run defense is not good. They gave up 130 yards rushing today. They did shut it down some in the second half. But overall, I'm still very concerned about where they are versus where they were. You see, their mentality was that they were really, at times, dominant defensively. They're not now. And they don't have that look right now. And I think if you're down Mosley and you're down Johnson and you don't have Reddick in the fold, you're not going to be close. Now, I don't know when Reed's coming back. There's another person they need. But you can't take those kind of hits to the defense. The other thing is they have not done a bad job pass blocking over 2 games. And they will, I think, be fine in that department. But they have got to do a bit. I'm going to go on the premise that they have faced 2 very good defenses, because I think Tennessee's defense is a lot better than people thought it would be. And they have a lot of size inside. But they have to be a lot better and a lot more proficient running the football than they have been these first 2 weeks. Hall had 14 for 62 today. He had 30 on one play, so he was 13 for 32. 13 for 32, and their ability to get short yardage, they got the short yardage that they had to convert today, the big conversion, they threw it. They do not look good in short yardage right now. Remember, they don't have a quarterback they can rely on to get them a yard. That's not his game. And Hall has never been the best short yardage back. Now, Allen had a very very productive game today. He had 2 catches and a big touchdown there. He had 30 yards rushing, 33 yards rushing, and a big touchdown there. He had a very productive game today. Hall, I told you at the start of the year, I thought he would catch a lot of touchdown passes this year. He caught one today. He will be a big factor in that regard. And those touchdown passes that he made in the game, they were really beautiful passes. No way around it. He made some really good throws there, but he's not as sharp as he can be. I think that will come, but I just don't want to see them have to put too much pressure on his mobility, because that's a recipe for disaster. It really is. So the Jets today got to 1-1. They got a 24-17 win. They came from behind on the road to do it. They got tied up on a big play and still responded. There was some good things. They opened up on the road 2 weeks in a row, which is highly unusual. Doesn't happen a lot. Now they have a Thursday night game against New England, which lost a tough overtime game to Seattle today. So 1-1, you're not concerned. But if you're thinking about them like we talked about them in the offseason, you are concerned. Because I'm seeing some shortcomings that you don't want to see. And they have to be rectified. And one of them is the undisciplined. In the first game they led the league in missed tackles last week. That's number one. Today, how many dumb penalties? Dumb penalties. I mean, can they just stop? 7 for 70. 3 personal fouls is just too much. They were critical. 100 yards of penalties is a touchdown. You cannot give the other team a touchdown every game. It's got to stop. And then use your head. I know I'm hard on Salah, but here's why I'm hard on Salah. First half, you score a touchdown, hard fought to get that touchdown. Really, you're lucky the game's 7-7. He gave you a gift, Levis did, when he had a field goal and actually tried to make a play and threw the ball backwards, got recovered by the Jets and saved them at least 3 points. You were going into there's a minute and change, just a little more than a minute left. It's 3rd down and 3. Your defense has not played well down to down in the game yet. They did make a couple of turnovers. They did force a couple of turnovers. They got one was a gift, the backward lateral. The interception was a solid play. So they got the ball twice. They had not played well down to down. You're getting the ball to start the second half. You're fortunate you have settled things down and you're 7-7. Why are you calling timeout when they are looking to run the clock out and have let the clock run? They would have let the clock run there. And then if they made their 3rd and 3, they would have called timeout, but they would have wasted a lot of time doing it because they wanted to make sure that they just didn't get the ball back because they get the ball to start the second half. You were getting the ball to start the second half. Why are you calling timeout on 3rd and 3? What happens? They make a play. You get 15 yards tacked on for a personal foul, and they get 3 points going into the locker room. That was just stupid on the Jets' part. And that was all Salah. It made no sense. Have a feel for the game. You're fortunate you're 7-7. You got a couple of breaks to be 7-7 in the game. To be tied up 7-7. You're getting the ball to start the 3rd quarter. Why are you calling timeout? and extend in the first half so they can make a play. If it was 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, I understand. Make him make a pass play. Instead, what do? They send it back out of the backfield, which is a safe play. He's a good receiver, makes the catch, gets hammered, and now it turns into a 35-yard play. Let them run the clock out there and get into the half. You're getting the ball to start the second half. If you weren't, I understand, but you were getting the ball. Stuff like that. Smarten up. That can cost you ball games. That, and stop being such a cheerleader. You know what? When your team blocks a ball, you don't need to chase the guy who blocked it down the field to hug him. Just get back to coaching the game. And maybe they won't make so many undisciplined errors. This has to be a far tighter ship. They have to do their communications better. They got to get the plays in better. How many times are they fighting the play clock? With a quarterback who's an all-time great and is 40 years old, he's been playing forever. He could play in his sleep. Why are you have him fighting the play clock all the time? Get him the play. Get him the personnel. Get it going. That kind of stuff just drives you mad. Do you know how many mistakes are made on offense in that league because people are rushing to get a playoff because they don't want to have the play clock go off? It happens all the time. It should not happen to a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. He has to bring a stability and an experience to the position. That's one of his greatest gifts. But that doesn't work unless you're running your sideline communication right and you have your things buttoned down on the sideline. It's the kind of stuff that just drives you crazy. They have got to stop making silly mistakes. They were fortunate. You didn't come out of that game today and say, boy, this was a night and day from the Niner game. Scratch the Niner game off. The Jets just went in today and we saw the real team. No. We saw a team that I'm telling you was very fortunate to get out of there with a win. Now, it was a big, big win. And I understand there's 17 games now, and you don't have to overplay the first 2 games. But Buffalo's already 2-0. Yes, you were opening with 2 road games. I understand that. But these were winnable. This was a winnable game. And you needed this team to get to 1-1. It was a very important win, and they got it. So it allows everybody to take a deep breath. But if you look at it, if you look at the injuries, if you look at the way the defense is making mistakes, if you look at the way they're playing the run, teams are going to go to school on what these teams have done to run the football on them, and you're going to continue to see that time and time and time again. You saw some things in the secondary you didn't like. They obviously were missing Reed, but you didn't like some of the things you saw in the secondary today. Way too many mistakes, way too many penalties. But obviously some positives. And you saw what happens. If you have an old run-of-the-mill quarterback, you don't win that game today. He won that game today with his accuracy and with his feel for the game because he knew when to go to quick offense because that was the only thing that was working. They weren't running the ball. They weren't protecting well. They were getting hurt by the aggressiveness of the Tennessee defense, so they turned it against them. That's experience. That's what Rodgers brings. And then, of course, he made some throws, including that 2nd and 16, which was a thing of beauty on the last drive. That the whole touchdown pass, thing of beauty. The 2nd and 16, thing of beauty. Those are the kind of plays you look and you say, there's not a lot of people who could do that. He'll get sharper. I understand that. He's clearly not vintage sharp yet. He's not Rodgers sharp. Not by any stretch. But the key now is get to Thursday, eliminate the Pats, get to 2-1, and get 11 days to relax and then welcome in a winnable game against a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix and the Broncos. That gets you 4 games in and 3-1. How big is that? Hey, that's fighting everything the Jets have been. That's turning the tables. How important is that? Enormous. Why? Because you're turning the tables on same old Jets. Salah came into today's game 3-17 in September. 3-17. If they can close out the Denver game at 3-1 after an 0-1 start, hey, that's huge. And it allows them to go to work and get better each week and go about their business and not have to hear about the same old Jets. That's why this win was so important today. Otherwise, you were going to hear all about the same old Jets. Now, you don't like the injuries you suffered today. You don't like some of the things you're seeing from the defense so far. You don't like a lot of things that you've seen so far, some of the shortcomings you've seen so far. But, and they've been anything but dominant. But they got the win. They put themselves in position. And with some solid planning and game planning and some good quarterback play, they can win these next couple of games at home and finish the first 4 games 3-1. And if you're thinking about going to the postseason, that's what you want to do. So for the Giants, tough loss, tough break with their kicker. Tough loss. Saw some promising things, especially from their wide receiver. Saw some good things. Red zone defense, although some of that was the Commanders, not the Redskins anymore. But they're 0-2, and they're staring at a brutal schedule the next 4 weeks. Not good. Jets at 1-1. Pats Thursday at home. Then Denver at home. If they can do that, take those 2 steps, be 3-1 after 4, they're right on schedule. And the Jets haven't been on schedule in forever. A couple of things about the league and then I want to do a little baseball real quick. Sam Darnold's 2-0. And the Vikings are 2-0. Good for them. Good for Sam. Saints are 2-0 and very impressive. Carr playing very well. How explosive were they today against the Cowboys? Talk about offensive production against that Dallas defense. Wow, 44-19. But how about Carr? 11 completions for 243 yards. Kamara, 115 and 3 touchdowns. Shaheed, 4 plays, 100 yards. Kamara, 2 for 65 and a touchdown on the ground. 4 touchdowns. Almost 200 yards of offense. So much for Kamara not being the same player anymore. What a performance by them. Bucks 2-0, winning in Detroit. Tremendous win. Harbaugh has the Chargers 2-0. Have they beaten teams they're supposed to beat? Yeah, but when was the last time the Chargers ever beat anybody they're supposed to beat 2 weeks in a row? Ravens 0-2. Not only 0-2, blow a 10-point lead at home to the Raiders. That's a tough 0-2 for a team that clearly was considered elite before the season started. They lost to Kansas City, I understand that. But losing a 10-point lead at home to the Raiders, that's a tough one. That's a very, very tough one. I told you, last week, I was a big Harrison guy. And he had a rough week 1. And a lot of people said, you said he was going to be so good, blah, blah. Hey, check him today. We haven't gotten to the half yet. 4 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's going to be that good. That good. And the Rams have got all beat up. And the Bengals have a little bit of a mastery on the Chiefs. So you knew today wouldn't surprise anybody in a week where there's a lot of surprising games today, okay? Bucks going into Detroit. Raiders going into Baltimore. Saints going into the Cowboys. Okay? Packers winning with Malik Willis. Browns, well, that's a toss-up with the Jaguars, but some surprising games. Bengals winning against Chiefs, not surprising. Playing well against the Chiefs, not surprising. They seem to always do that, even though they come off a crazy loss. I saw that game eliminated 43% of the survivor pools in week 1 when the Pats beat. A couple of years ago, Minnesota was good. This is not a couple of years ago. It was more than a couple of years ago. Somebody was playing Minnesota in week 1. Somebody was supposed to win like 2 games. I can't remember who it was. And they wound up winning 2 games, but they won at Minnesota in week 1 and eliminated everybody from the survivor pool. I can't remember what year it was or what team it was, but they were picked. They were supposed to win like 4 games. They won like 2, but they won opening week. So it happens. The Pats were picked to win 4 games this year, and they've already had 1 and lost the other one in overtime. And Washington won a game with a young quarterback today, but the young quarterbacks, as you would expect, they're struggling a little bit, as you would expect. Now to baseball. Mets lose today, another tough game late. Phillies, though, you knew these games with the Phillies are going to be tough. Now the Braves have the Dodgers tonight. Mets could fall a game out. Lost yesterday, had a 4-1 lead, lost 6-4. Lose today, had a 1-0 lead, lose 2-1. Yankees win today. And, yesterday I went to see my son play football. So I got back about 10 o'clock, and I have to admit, road drove home from the game from Massachusetts, and I slept in the car. So when I got home, it was like 10 o'clock. And I saw the scores. I knew the Yankees had lost 7-1, but I didn't pay any attention to what had happened during the game. And I got a bunch of texts saying, "Did you see what went on in this game?" And I went back and looked at it. Now, they won today. All right, and the Orioles lost. So the Yankees have a 3-game lead right now. As the games dwindle away, and yes, we have the 3 games next week, 24, 25, 26 against the Orioles. And Judge is out of his home run slump after the Grand Slammer and then another homer today. But what were the Yankees and Cole thinking? It's too late now, a day late and a win short, so they already won on the game, and it loses some of its flavor. But if I'd been around yesterday, I would have been taking the paint off the walls. I know I'm hard on Cole often, but you are a Cy Young award-winning, top of the league, top of the sport hurler. And you are pitching in a huge pennant race game. And you are off to a good start in the ball game. And you are going to take a hitter who has given you, I know, a lot of problems. He has owned you. And we know plenty of times that great pitchers have been owned by bad players, Sam Seaver and Tommy Hutton. Okay? But Devers has owned Cole. We know that. I think he had 8 homers and 40-something at-bats. But you are going to walk him intentionally with nobody on base? Are you serious? That's how you're going to compete? And the Yankees condone this? Now, I don't know if it was somebody in another room, coming up with this masterful decision. I don't know if it was the coaching staff that came up with this brilliant decision or if Cole came up with it on his own. But Shame on whoever came up with it. How can you possibly not only send that message to your team, but compete that way? How can you not have more confidence in your ability? I mean, to say that was embarrassing doesn't even cover it. I mean, it's pathetic and nothing short of pathetic. We know what happened, but it's just mentally collapsing. Completely just giving up when you're supposed to be the guy who leads the way. Like I said, I almost feel like I can't go as crazy a day later when they've won a game and it's already over, and I'm sure a lot of people had their say about it, but that's sickening and nothing short of it. They should all be ashamed of themselves. We'll see you later.